It's 5:56 a.m. on Saturday, June 22nd, 2024. The wipers are running. Temperature is about 64 degrees. It held pretty steady at that temperature all the way here from my home in Champlain. We're at the U.S. Oval, the former Plattsburgh Air Force Base, for the North Country Honor Flight send-off. 2 flights again today on this Saturday morning. We have a drizzle that has been falling since the middle of the overnight hours and is anticipated to be throughout the ceremony here. Nothing overwhelming. We did have torrential downpours about 2 days ago, where the city of Plattsburgh got about over 2 inches in about a half hour's time and had flooding in downtown, but none of that's expected today. The hot, humid days that we had during the week are supposed to be in our rear view mirror. But of course the main thing is, what's the temperature and the weather supposed to be like in Washington, D.C. as these veterans head to Washington to look at the war monuments there and get paid respect. There's a good number of Vietnam era veterans going today, but a few from other eras also going today. We'll find out more about that when they have the ceremony. For those of us here, the drizzle is just an inconvenience, but for my video equipment, I have to make sure that's covered, so I'm going to have to find a spot that I can either be under a tarp or utilize my umbrella without blocking too many people. As you can see, there is a breeze. We just had a flag blow down over that way, but it won't be there very long. Now, Clinton County and the Plattsburgh area has several legends around, and one of the legends in the North Country is this fella here who wasn't born here but moved here. Is that correct?
That is correct. I moved here some time ago.
And your name?
Stan Ransom, the Connecticut peddler.
And you've been entertaining folks in this area for half a decade or more.
Oh,
right?
yes, quite a long time. When you get to be 96, then you have to have a lot behind you. No, I perform. I'm a past director of the libraries in the area, and I do a lot of public service all I can. I'm in the Battle of Plattsburgh and all the other organizations that will help people to have a better life. That's my aim in life.
And you've been living up to that over the years, ever since I've known you, and before I knew you, Stan.
Yeah.
You're wearing an honor flight jacket and a World War II veteran, it says. What flight?
Yes, I was in the 19th Infantry Regiment in Japan in the Army of Occupation. It was in the battle. It was in the World War II, right. And then after that, after it closed down and they became an occupying party to Japan, then I was part of that mission to go in there and help what we could do to bring Japan back into normalcy. And that was quite a sight, because I got to see the atomic bomb wreckage and everything that was done. All the cities in Japan were completely bombed out and so on. And one of the things I found most interesting was that a number of years later, in 2019, my wife and I took a trip back to Japan. And we noticed that all the bombed out places were now high-rise apartments and high-rise this and schools and things. But they still had the museums that showed the effect of the atomic attack on Japan as a lesson to their own people.
So it wasn't all just hostility toward the U.S. for doing this to them.
No,
That they also
it was
wanted their people to learn a lesson too.
They wanted the people of Japan the children particularly to learn a lesson as to what war can do to people and what they should work to avoid. So
Well, imagine going there when you did. You had to have a little bit of animosity in your direction because, whether
yes,
whether they bombed Pearl Harbor or not, we still
right.
did a lot of destruction to them. And if we hadn't, a whole lot of more U.S. lives would have been lost.
Oh, that's true.
Ending that war.
That's true. I believe that the atomic bombs lessened the extent of the war because those people were going to fight to the death,
Right.
all the way back into the caves and such, and that would have not been very good for our troops.
Well, there were decades later that they were still finding Japanese soldiers on islands and stuff.
That's right.
Didn't
The
know the war ended.
islands were, they refused to come out because they didn't believe what was told to them, that the war had ended.
Incredible. So
Boy.
what flight did you go on to?
Huh?
What honor flight did you take? How long ago
The
was it?
2017.
That's right,
and-
7 years ago now.
Yeah, and it was a wonderful experience. First, I had to get used to not walking, but
Yeah,
taking
but
wheelchairs everywhere. But
Doesn't
I
matter how old or young you are.
accepted that, yes. And it was so impressive to go down there. You know what got me the most, though, was the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. These guards without any insignia, walking back and forth, doing everything by the numbers, just keep going. And it got a heart throb for me, I tell you, to see what was going on there.
Yeah, you
But
gotta-
then when I came to the wall, that was wonderful because they had an oriented area for the people who, like me, had gone to Japan and other places. So I saw that part of the wall that covered my group. So it was very great and very impressive.
Well, that's the whole idea, to thank veterans like yourself for what you did. And right now most of our veterans aren't a lot of you World War II guys still around, Stan. You realize that, don't
I
you?
realize that. I'm 96, so I realize I don't have too many people that I know that are in that category.
Yeah, because in 1945, when the war was coming to an end, if you were 18, you had been born. And
Oh yes, oh yes. Well, every morning I get up at 5 o'clock and I go over to the Y, and my wife and I walk I walk a mile every single morning before breakfast, and then she walks 3 miles, and we keep that up every day, including Sundays. So we walk and walk and walk. And do you know what that's done for me? I can climb stairs without any problem. I can walk for a number of miles if I want to. And it does mean a great deal. And when I see some of my friends who are sitting in easy chairs and can hardly get up, I think they're in the wrong place.
yeah, you use it
You
or lose it.
gotta exercise.
Use it or lose it, right? I live in a 2-story house, and I walk up and down those stairs every day, several times, and I say,
That's
I'm glad
good.
I'm glad I do, because if I didn't walk up and down those stairs, chances are I
You
wouldn't
wouldn't be able to.
Right. So you got to
You've got it right.
So you walk indoors though at the Y.
Well,
Yeah.
walk indoors, but later on we walk outside.
Yeah, when the weather allows it, yeah.
And yes, eventually we will walk outside because my wife and Christina and I have a mission. We have pickup sticks and plastic bags, and we go to 8 to 10 different places in the city. In front of, let's say, City Hall or any of the parks or anything, Melissa Penfield Park, and we pick up trash. We pick up trash everywhere we go while we're walking, and that means it's a little cleaner by the time we've finished. Pine Street, every place in the city that has a spot where people gather, we've been walking on.
Now, isn't it considered of people to leave that trash for you to pick up, though? Isn't that very
It was
thoughtful?
nice of them to do that.
Otherwise, you'd be out there and
That's
nothing
right.
to
There
do.
wouldn't be nothing
But
to do.
these people, they're so thoughtful. They go out there and throw their trash in the ground
Just for us.
just to give you a purpose.
That's a good way to think of it.
And there are so many of those people too that it's mind-boggling.
Oh, there's a lot of people who do
It's
that.
mind-boggling that
Yep.
people treat their community that way. I just never
Well,
understand it.
we feel it's another thing we can do when we're not being busy to help the city look better, and that's our goal. So it works.
It's working.
Yeah.
All right, I'm hearing some sirens in the background, which means that
Ooh, it's about to go.
it's gonna go. It's only quarter after here, so
Oh, yeah.
they might show up at a moment's notice. I want to be ready to.
300 motorcycles and screaming sirens. This is a wonderful challenge, I must say.
It is.
I try never to forget to come here every time there is an effort to do the honor flight,
Yeah.
because it's so important to remember what their veterans have done and to honor them with their work by this
Yeah, and
impressive thing here.
and it's just amazing that this group that's been doing this for over 10 years now is still going so strong, and
I know.
the amount of money they have to raise to make all this possible. I just can't say enough about the people who are on this honor flight committee.
And I appreciate, too, all of the dignitaries who have come. I always have to say hi to Billy Jones and Dan Steck and all the other people who represent us, because they've taken the trouble to come out early in the morning to
Yeah.
give us their opinion of what's going on.
Steck drives up from Queensbury, and to make it up here. And
Oh,
you have, you have to look up to him, don't you?
Oh, yes. You sure do.
Not too many people here who don't look up to Dan Steck when he shows up.
Oh, that's right. He's
The
a
towering
tall
figure.
person.
All
A
right.
lot of good people here.
Okay, I hear those sirens getting louder, Stan. I will let
Okay.
you go. Appreciate
Well,
you
thank
being
you
here
very
again.
much. I appreciated the idea of coming and talking with you.
All right.
Thanks again.
All right, the legendary Stan Ransom, a Connecticut peddler who did so much for the history of this area, and the sirens are getting loud, so we're gonna try to find a spot to catch them. The crowd is starting to gather here. Before all is said and done, about 45 minutes from now, it's going to be very difficult to see through that throng of people who are behind me. And it looks like Hannaford is here again with a nice display of food and stuff for the veterans and the crew. We have located ourselves under a pine tree here, hoping to not have to hold our umbrella while we're recording this. We can see the lights about to come around the corner. And here they come. Here comes the parade. If you live in the city of Plattsburgh, this is what wakes you up when it's honor flight time. The next honor flight is the Saturday of Labor Day weekend, and there'll be one on the first Saturday in October. And there's 2 flights each thing, so a total of 8 flights on 4 days this year. Feel free to count the bikes. Many of these bikes come from long distances, so with the rain today and overnight, the numbers may be down a little bit today. We'll see. Slide Mountain, Shadyville, not just bikers, obviously. The Various law enforcement agencies are here. Our first responders show up. They'll have a display down the road that we won't get, but they do have a flag that when the veterans leave here, they'll be flying. They have the aerial ladder trucks, and they hold a flag up and let the entourage drive underneath that on their way to the airport.
Morrisonville ambulance. Morrisonville. Bloomingdale. South Plattsburgh. Customs and Border Protection. Customs and Border Protection. We've seen several state police vehicles go by. The Sheriff's Department, Clinton County, as well as Essex County are always represented. Depending on where the veterans are coming from, Franklin County is often here. Plattsburgh City Police, Sheriff's Department, Clinton County, Plattsburgh City Police, Plattsburgh Police, Sheriff's Department, New York State Police. Believe it or not, there are some people who complain about this noise. Because it wakes them up. State Police. State police vehicle. And we see the honor flight bus coming in the distance. Usually driven by Danny Barber. Yep, Dan's at the wheel. State Trooper, Clinton County Sheriff's Department, City of Plattsburgh. In years past, there was always, we see the Customs and Border Protection here, but there's always Border Patrol coming through. But this year here, they're unable to send vehicles. They're too busy. There's Essex County Sheriff's. Border Patrol is too busy picking up illegal entrants sneaking across our northern border. The Swanton sector, which includes all of Clinton County over to the end of Franklin County and northern Vermont, picked up over 11,000. Here's Keysville, over 11,000 illegal migrants from October through May. And those are the ones that they got caught. All right, we're going to head for another location. There's a lady who's been involved for many years now. Look, she's getting a hug from Joe LoTemplio. Oh my gosh. It's all downhill from here after a hug from Joe LoTemplio. What else you got to...
Hey, I knew him when he was an intern.
It's all good.
It's not Dr. LoTemplio, though. He was a newspaper intern.
Newspaper intern, right.
And now, look at him today, huh?
Yeah.
Here's a lady who shows up every day, on her flight, and that's all she does, just show up and read a few things and doesn't do any preparation or anything. Or Janet Dupree, when did you get so thoroughly involved in this? You remember when it was?
I was there for the first meeting at the Keysville Fire Department in 2013. Driving home from Albany, they called me and wanted me to stop, and I said no. I'm hungry. I'm cold. It's sleeting. I'm not stopping. And got to that Keysville exit and said, got to do it.
What the heck?
And I was sold. I have been doing it ever since.
Now you read off the bios of all these veterans. We're going to be sending, 28 today, or 20, how many, 24? I can never remember
It's 29 with
29.
a veteran guardian, so yeah.
I've got a guardian who's a veteran. Okay. If there's a guardian who's a veteran also, then we try to include them in the list. And
Yep.
But a lot of work and preparation goes into preparing that little bit that you read, huh?
It does. I try not to stumble or make a mistake in any of their bios, and it's so often the first time they have felt truly respected, and I have the privilege and the honor of being the person to make those comments to them, and always hope I get it right and that they're comfortable with it. And it's such a privilege for me. We have 26 Vietnam veterans going today, and again, I lost a brother-in-law at the age of 20 back in years ago, 1968, and so they have a very dear spot in my heart.
Yes, and you were telling me off camera that there's a new flagpole here in his memory here at the base, put up on Memorial Day.
Yes, and we had 25 of our family members who were here for the Memorial Day ceremony, and it was a big family, the Dupree family, obviously, and it just kind of struck me that day the number of younger siblings never knew art. So for them to be here, as Danny Keifetz put up the flagpole that he made, and he and Greg Lee did it so much for me, and I'm so honored, and I kind of tear up every time I look at that flagpole.
Yeah, Danny Keifetz, it's an Adirondack pole, I can't remember, something Adirondack.
Adirondack Flagpole Foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are first quality poles that he produces too.
Yes, it's beautiful, and it's just, we're just very, very honored.
Now, getting back to the bios that you read, you've got to prepare all those, don't you? You have to know what you're reading, so you do all the legwork, we'll call it here, to prepare those.
We have great flight leaders, and the flight leaders do most of the interviews. Once in a while I sneak in, but for the great majority of it, the flight leaders are at the interviews. They take down notes on what the veteran, whoever he or she may be, and they send that information to me. I always tell them they can't send me too much because I can whittle it down, and then I start working at it, and after the second, third, fourth time, I feel a little more comfortable that I've got it right, and those are the ones that I read today. So again,
you've already
fingers
read these
crossed.
at home several times.
Oh yes, including last night after we got done our dinner at Best Western. So I'm always hoping that it's done correctly. So.
You all do a great job, and everybody does such a great job here. All the volunteers that make this happen it's just incredible.
Calvin, I get a lot of credit for what we do here, but I'm just as small a part as everybody else, and we have the most amazing volunteers. They never let us down. They're always here. Look at the crowd here today, and the spectators who show up. I mean, you and I mean, we're North Country, and how fortunate we are to live in this area.
Yeah, and they're always looking for volunteers. And as I was mentioning to Barry Finnegan when I was here in May, as soon as you volunteer, you get the same pay as he gets as the chairman. You know, you get the same pay immediately. So.
Hey, these 8 years I've tried every now and then to get him to, give me a little raise, but I haven't got it yet.
Well, 10% times 0 is still going to be
still going to be 0. So, and I'm good with that. I'm really good with that.
But to talk about the Vietnam era, of course, I'm coughing this morning because that kept me out of the war with my asthma. So I was very happy with that because
absolutely
for different reasons. But and you had the rise of the hippie generation there, and they were protesting the war, and they didn't just protest the war, they protested our soldiers, our military people. And a lot of these guys came back and had to take their uniforms off when they got here so that they wouldn't be harassed at the airport.
Yeah, and it was a terrible time. There were often signs in lawns that said, don't enter if you're have been in Vietnam. It was a tough time. I would tell you, the day that my brother-in-law was killed, of course we were running a business, and that you still have to keep the business open. And we went to the bank to just kind of get things, and there was a guy standing in the front yard saying, "Kill the Vietnam veterans."
Oh my God.
And it's a day I'll never forget. And
wow.
And he was a school teacher.
Wow.
So
you wonder what
that
he was teaching our children. Huh?
Absolutely. And so many of them. And again, I guess one of the reasons I will do the bios 3, 4, 5 times is because they so often feel this is the first time that they've actually been respected, not just by me, but by everybody who's here. And we want that one to go right. We don't want anything to have a mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at pictures from the World War II veterans returning home and the big parades and the celebrations, it was far different for these guys.
Yes, it is. And, yes, it just is. It's hard to describe. And it's, again, I feel so fortunate to have gotten to know how many hundreds of them now since we started in 2013. And I missed 2 ceremonies when I was still in Albany, voting on bills at 7 o'clock in the morning, but they're the only 2 I've missed. So I've gotten to know them all pretty well, and it's just a privilege. It's the only way you can describe it.
Yeah, I've been fortunate thus far. I've been able to make everyone, including that first trip down to Albany to the airport, and watching those bikers. And it was a cold day when we took that first trip down to Albany. Since then, all the flights have been here out of Plattsburgh, but that first one, those bikers driving down there, it just amazed me that they had that dedication.
Our motorcycle guys again, they'll be out there at full force, have been this morning. In spite of the weather, they never let us down, and it's just amazing. I mean, and it seems like we do keep getting more and more and more every single time we go. So, and they'll still come back here in the evening. They'll go home and get dried off a little bit, and they'll be back here tonight. So, I think it's hard for people to comprehend what goes into putting all this together. It takes a village. Darn right it does, and we have a super village.
Yeah. And so again, the North Country Honor Flight has a Facebook page, a website. If you want to get involved, feel free to contact them. If you see any volunteers here that speak to them. They can tell you where to go, how to get involved, because you need to keep this going.
Absolutely, and I will continue to say the thing that I'm pushing the most is there's still so many veterans. We just got some input this week about some 98, 88, 95-year-olds. We're going to get them on the next flight. These Vietnam veterans deserve to go on a flight, and so many of them keep saying, I'm going to wait and let the others go. This is their time. This is when they should be going. They're not any younger than I am right now, so it's time to get them out there and get them on our waiting list. And we'll do the best we can to get them on as soon as we can.
Yeah. So when you get that 98-year-old, you say, well.
He goes first. He goes first. That guy's going first.
Okay, Janet. Thank you very much. Anything
Thank
else
you,
you'd like to
Kevin.
say?
No,
All
no.
right.
Thank you.
Janet Duper. Okay, here's a fellow who we talked to last year, and after he talked to us, he left town. So.
Well, I'm back now.
You're back.
So my name is Luke Basso. From 6th grade to 11th grade, I was a student at Shazy Central Rural School. Then I moved to North Carolina to be with family, and I used to live there beforehand. When I lived in the North Country, I had a YouTube channel, Filmperia, where I interviewed historical witnesses, veterans, and a lot of other various people. Since then, I still have my channel. I've expanded it a lot since then. I've had over 75 interviews. About 1/3 of them are for people from the North Country. I was also just at the anniversary of D-Day in Normandy, France, and that was a one-in-a-lifetime experience. That might be the last one. That will be the last one because, most World War II veterans are around 100 years old, and I thought I was going to see more World War II vets. I saw only about 7 of them, it was very sad to only see that very few of them.
I could make it over there. Now, have you graduated yet?
I missed my high school graduation to be at the anniversary of D-Day in
Oh,
North
okay.
Carolina. Yeah.
Well, you could go to the Shazy one.
I will be there. Yeah.
They had their class day recently, and they're showing the old pictures, and you were in there several times. So you're in the slideshow.
And that'll feel like more. That's gonna feel like more like my actual graduation because I've been there for so long. You got someone who wants to say hi to you.
Okay, we're doing an interview here, young Bell. So one of our fine viewer supporters here, Walter Hamilton, who was on an honor flight recently.
Oh, okay.
Great guy from Moores. But yeah, so I'm sure they won't throw you out if you show up on Friday for the graduation.
Well, that's probably gonna be the last time I see most of them, and my teachers, my former classmates, my friends, and everyone in Shazy. I don't know when I'm gonna be here again. I really don't.
So I'll try to give them a warning that you're going to show up.
All right. And for people who want to, even though I'm not here for a while, I still do a lot of Zoom interviews. If anyone knows a veteran or a historical witness, like a Holocaust survivor or a victim of communism, that their story needs to be shared, if you think their story needs to be shared, contact me. Well, yeah, you got my card.
I got your card right here.
Yeah. Oh, my email's on there. You want to read it out?
Sure. There's Luke B as in boy. Film Purio
Peria.
There's an A, okay, at Gmail.
At gmail.com.
Yep.
lukeb.filmperia@gmail.com.
Yeah, they'll even show the
QR code. All right, thank you.
all right, Luke,
yeah.
good seeing you.
Yeah.
Take care. Nice to make you up here. All right. Larry Salamando playing Reveille, and we're under some tents here, and a lot of people between us and the American Legion Post 912 or posting the colors. Normally we like to get a better view, but if we stepped outside and pointed our camera up toward the flagpole, all we'd get is
Good
raindrops.
morning, everyone, and welcome to
There's
Honor
Mr. Barry
Flights
Finnegan.
54 and 55.
There we go, 54 and 55. Dan Steck was asking me off camera how many flights, and now we know.
Thanks to everybody in the North Country that helped support these things. By the end of today, when these 28 veterans return home, we'll have sent 840 veterans on a day of a lifetime. Want to send a special thank you out to all those bikers that were out at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning to go pick up these veterans in this kind of weather. They never say a word, they just keep going. Their motto is, they couldn't stop fighting when it's raining, so we're not going to stop riding. Incredible dedication. Thank you, Lloyd, and all the bikers out there. Everybody knows the whole flight revolves around the flight leaders. And this time we had two great flight leaders that put this whole thing together. They visited every veteran, they know their stories, they got everybody all arranged and ready to fly today. And Gina Bond and Fred Woodward did a fantastic job. Thank you, guys. And we'd like to send a special thank you out to our sponsor today, Harmony Golf Club. Had a golf tournament last year, raised over $25,000 to pay for this flight today. So thank you, Harmony. Bruce McCormick did a great job organizing the tournament. Kim Marcia, Stevie Fuller from Harmony, and Stevie and Jason Fuller from Fuller's Excavating, and Mike from Murray Electric were the major sponsors to make that whole day work. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn you over to our expert, Mr. Tom Hallett from Mountain Lake PBS.
Right.
Thank you.
MC is back.
Thank you, Barry. Pleasure to be back with everyone. Good morning. Let's get things started. Please stand and welcome Honor Flight veteran Glenn Miller to the singing of our national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bomb bursting in air, gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Well done as always.
Thank you, Glenn. And please remain standing now for our Pledge of Allegiance. And joining me is Hayden Devlin from Oswego Valley Central School.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to introduce some of the political leaders and dignitaries here with us this morning. New York State Senator Dan Steck, representing the 45th Senate District. New York State Assemblyman Billy Jones, representing the 115th Assembly District. Town of Plattsburgh Supervisor Michael Cashman. Clinton County Legislators Calvin Castine, Dave Bazile, Wendell Hughes, and Kevin Randall are all here with us this morning. And it's now my honor to welcome Bruce McCormick, representing Harmony Golf Club, our flight sponsor today.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, everyone. Barry said I had to keep this really short because everybody's getting wet. Okay, so we will.
No golfing today.
On behalf of Harmony Golf Club, I just want to say that we're really proud to sponsor flights 54 and 55 today. We held a golf tournament last year, and when Barry and I first talked about it, we thought we'd get a few $1,000s. Well, we ended up that we garnered over $25,000 for the honor flight that's going out today. So on behalf of that, like Stevie Fuller, Kim Marcia, and Jason Fuller and Mike Murray were big contributors to the flight, or to the tournament. They did everything that I asked for. It was just outstanding. So we're holding another tournament this year on July 6th, and it's been booked for almost over a month now. And we have 51 four-person teams participating again this year in it. So hopefully we'll raise enough funds to sponsor another flight next year. And thank you everyone for coming out in the rain and supporting flights 54 and 55 off today. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank you, Bruce.
Fantastic.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Major General Robert Parker. He is the former commander of the 20th Air Force, the Air Force Space Command in Wyoming, and the ICBM Task Force Commander for U.S. Strategic Command. He was responsible for overseeing the nation's ICBM force, including 2 operational missile... That was great. Ladies and gentlemen, Major General Bob Parker, I do want to mention this one thing. He's local. He grew up in Cadyville, went to St. John's Academy, graduated from St. Michael's. Welcome.
Well, good morning, all. We're going to have to have an adjustment here. When Tom and I were talking, I thought about an hour speech, but because of the rain, I'm going to cut it down to about 30 minutes. 2 things I want to do. I want to recognize the Northern County, North Country honor flight. You are amazing, and I'm talking about all the folks out here. In San Antonio, I ran this 13 flights, about roughly 1,000 people. We never had a turnout like this, and particularly with weather like this. So my hat's off to the staff and to everybody in the North Country. You should be proud. And for the veterans, my comments are that this should be a day you should remember. This is the community's recognition of your sacrifices you made. We've got fighter pilots. Ani Parrish had 360 missions in Vietnam. We've got people who were in the Army in Vietnam. And I think this is our small way of thanking you for your service. And one comment for the folks that haven't worn the uniform, every person in the 2 groups, the 29, all have one thing in common. They all raised their right hand and swore to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. No matter where they're from, what they did in the past, they committed. It wasn't a contract. They committed, and some of them gave their lives. So all of our veterans, I congratulate you, and keeping it short, I salute you.
Well under a half hour.
Thank you so much, General. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Morrisonville Elementary School Choir to sing Red, White, and Blue.
They're supposed to be right here with us here, so we're... There we go. Song written probably close to a decade ago now by Morrisonville Elementary Choir at the time, and Roy Hurd, local musician.
Thank you. Now join me in welcoming Joe Patnos with the Clinton County American Legion.
Penny's going to drench us here. Thank you, Penny.
It's going to pay tribute to the honor flight veterans that have passed since our last one.
Whoa.
Good morning. Would everyone please remove their hats? We have Flight 12, Timothy Tryon. Flight 31, John Richard Adams. Flight 49, Norris Reinhardt. And we have one other, one of our honor guard detail members, Ted Alwine, who passed away this past week. We'd like to make sure we mention him. Thank you. We're now going to have a firing detail that's going to fire, and taps following.
Thank you, Joe. It's now my pleasure to introduce Larry Ebert to the scene of More Than a Name on a Wall.
Particularly poignant to the 26 Vietnam veterans going today.
Check one. I guess I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to sing in here with you guys. So anyway, thank you all for coming out to honor our veterans on sacrifices they made and stuff, so we may enjoy the freedom that we have today. There's 58,000 names on the Vietnam Wall. So I'm sure some of you in the crowd have relatives, friends that are on that wall, family members. If you ever, or should you ever visit Washington, D.C., you should see the wall. And you should touch it. And it in return will touch you. This next song is for all those whose names are on that wall, and for all those who risked having their names on the wall.
She held some flowers as her tears began
all for your service. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Larry. I would now like to introduce Mike Farrow for our closing prayer.
Good morning. I would like to remind everybody there's a scripture that says, "This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." It may be a little difficult in a raindrop. It's hard to believe that we are in the 12th summer of sending veterans to Washington, D.C. through the North Country Honor Flight. Today we send veterans spanning time from the Cold War era to Vietnam to Desert Storm. Each veteran here today offered their lives for the protection of our Constitution. Each of our veterans joined not knowing what fate awaited them, nor did those whose remains rest at the tomb of the unknown soldier at Arlington Cemetery. Today our veterans will visit the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier monument. The monument is carved from a single rectangular block of marble to honor unknown soldiers who gave their lives for liberty. The inscription on the monument reads, "Here rests in honored glory an American soldier known but to God." Yet we, who are here gathered today, honor these veterans who lived, and we give them thanks. We thank our God for them and for their service. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for the days leading to this moment in time. Thank you for each of our veterans traveling to Washington, D.C. today. May our veterans feel the love from each of us assembled here today. More importantly, Father, may they feel your love. May they forge new friendships. May you grant them journey mercies to and from Washington, D.C. And I pray this in Christ's name. Amen. Flight 54 and 55, thank you for your service. Thank you for my freedom. Godspeed.
Thank you, Mike. It's now my pleasure to introduce Director of Operations Jenna Dupree with the introduction and bios of our veterans.
I am given the honor once again of introducing the veterans, our Vietnam veterans, and all of the others who are here today participating in Flight 54. Flight Leader Fred Woodward. I remind everyone to respect our veterans. If you want to visit, please step away. These are very important days for these guys. Gary Bennett, U.S. Army, 1964 to 1966, Vietnam. Gary had basic training at Fort Dix and AIT as a personnel radar operator at Fort Riley. Assigned to Big Red 1 Infantry Division, Gary used an infrared telescope to detect movement and light up the night. The telescope was so bright he couldn't see for a while after using it. Gary used 145 and 150 howitzers and was an expert with the M14 and M16 rifles. Discharged, Gary missed the 3 a.m. bus. Escorted to the airport, he was asked to re-up. Response, "Are you crazy?" Gary belongs to the Fort Covington American Legion, Messina VFW, and is an honor guard at the Brushton Moira American Legion. Gary Bennett. Ricky Cornish, U.S. Air Force, 1972 to 1979, 1981 to 1994, Vietnam. Rick enlisted, had basic training at Lackland Air Force Base. In Denver, Rick trained as an aircraft armament systems mechanic, known as a bomb loader. Sent to Korea, an advanced training group loaded flares, bombs, and rockets in the Sea of Japan. Stationed at Plattsburgh Air Force Base, Rick was a load crew member. He then trained the crews and certified their proficiency. Rick left the Air Force, re-enlisted, sent to Griffith Air Force Base, then to Lakenheath, England. Rick received many commendations for his 22 years of service. In retirement, Rick served as commander and senior vice commander at Post 309, Peru, VFW. Ricky Cornish. Jerome DeSnyder, U.S. Army, 1967 to 1970, Vietnam. Graduating from dental school, Jake enlisted and was ordered to Okinawa. Married, Jake and his wife could live there, but they needed to buy a house. With no money, Jake put $6,800 on his credit card. With a large medical clinic, Jake often went to missile sites with his dental equipment to treat the soldiers. The dentists were told to be aware of 200 MPs leaving for Vietnam as the USS Pueblo was captured. Troops returning to Okinawa needed more dental care in 3 years than in 15 to 20 years in private practice. Jake said, quote, "I saw stuff in the hospital I don't ever want to see again." Jerome DeSnyder. Joseph Peter Dufour, U.S. Navy, 1963 to 1967, Vietnam. Pete had basic and AIT training at Great Lakes Naval Station. Pete was a ship fitter and welder. Pete had 4 tours to Vietnam on the USS Ticonderoga CG-47 aircraft carrier, mostly in the Tonkin Gulf. Planes on the Ticonderoga provided air support and bombing runs over Vietnam. Pete was exposed to Agent Orange. In port, the ships competed in blood draws. Pete's captain said they went on shore if they gave blood. Pete gave blood. Pete's first daughter was born while he was in the Vietnam waters. His best day was July 8, 1967, when he got out. Joseph Peter Dufour. Maurice Forcier, U.S. Army, 1966 to 1969, Vietnam. Enlisted to avoid the draft, a heart murmur kept Mo from joining the Air Force. Told the Army would take anybody, Mo trained at Fort Dix. Ordered to Vietnam, Mo was a heavy equipment operator, handled explosives, built roads, and underground entrance roads with 2 90-degree turns, preventing a direct hit on our troops. Asked what he liked most in Vietnam, Joe said, "I survived and enjoyed camaraderie with fellow soldiers."
Joe was a close friend of Wesley Black, who passed away after he went on Honor Flight 34. Mo testified at the Montpelier State House on the burn pit exposure issues. Maurice Forcier. Francis Gagne, U.S. Army, 1964 to 1967, Vietnam. Frank's grandmother said he needed discipline. She signed his enlistment at age 17. At Fort Dix, Frank trained as a truck driver. Frank serviced delivering anything and everything, mail, laundry, stones, whatever wasn't taking place. A spinal meningitis outbreak at Fort Ord sent Frank to Germany, where he handled ammunitions and other supplies. Frank's last position was driving the battalion commander. Frank had a car and a pass to leave the base. Soldiers paid him to drive them around Europe, so Fred got free rides. Asked about his military service, Frank said, "I learned discipline. Grandmothers know best." Francis Gagne. Walter Hamilton, U.S. Army, 1967 to 1968, Vietnam.
Okay.
Walter had basic training at Fort Dix and AIT as a crane operator at Fort Leonard Wood. Sent to Vietnam, Walter traveled shotgun on the convoys with supplies, passing food and candy to children along the road. Walter said you appreciate what you have when you see how others live. Walter recalls the snakes and spiders were everywhere. Walter had one good Thanksgiving dinner, and then it was sea rations all over again. Called home due to the death of his father, Walter was discharged. Walter and his wife Carol are proud both their sons served in the Middle East. Walter Hamilton. John Harrington, U.S. Air Force, 1976 to 1997, Cold War. John had basic training at Lackland Air Force Base and AIT radio relay communications at Kessler Air Force Base. Sent to Turkey as a radio operation and microwave communications, John returned stateside for AIT, back to Turkey as a maintenance radio relay communications. In Germany, John's communications equipment was on wheels and easy to move. In the States, John performed maintenance on missile sites and as a facility manager for Minuteman missiles. John was really good at moving around to Wright-Patterson, Loring, MacDill, Chinook, Ellsworth, and Minot Air Force bases. John received many commendations for his 21 years of military service. John Harrington. William Kennedy, U.S. Army, 1968 to 1971, Vietnam. Bill enlisted, trained at Fort Dix, had AIT at Fort Monmouth, and military police training at Fort Gordon. Sent to the New Jersey coast, Bill had oversight of the Blue Room, observing activities should missiles need to be fired. Assigned to Korea, Bill flew regularly with ammunition on a Chinook helicopter to the DMZ. Bill's unit often visited Korean orphanages, playing and spending time with the children. Passing an older Korean man, Bill bought a small pepper, took a bite, lost his breath as the man laughed, "Never again." Asked about Korea, Bill said, "It's hot and rainy," imagine that, "except in January, it's very cold." William Kennedy. John Leal, U.S. Air Force, 1968 to 1988, Vietnam. John trained at Lackland Air Force Base and trained at Chinook as an aircraft hydraulic repairman. John joined the 380th Field Maintenance Squadron at Plattsburgh Air Force Base. John was then sent to Clark in the Philippines. John spent 4 years in Hickman, Hawaii, an easy decision. At Seymour Johnson, John advanced to aircraft quality control. Sent to Korea, John was the supervisor. John returned to Plattsburgh Air Force Base as supervisor of the hydraulic shop. John said the best crews were in Plattsburgh. John received many medals and commendations for his 20 years of military service. John Leal. Gary Liberty, U.S. Air Force, 1974 to 1994, Desert Storm. 6 days after Gary and Julie married, he was at Lackland Air Force Base. In Denver, Gary trained as a bomb loader. Assigned to Plattsburgh Air Force Base, Gary went from loading bombs to maintaining nuclear stockpiles. In Turkey, they were told not to walk near housing, but to walk around to the NCO club. After a few drinks, Gary and a friend took the shortcut. A soldier dropped out of the tree with his gun pointed at him. Gary gave him a bourbon bottle. He took 2 swallows and they let them walk away. Gary participated in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and retired at Plattsburgh. Gary received the Kuwait Liberation Medal and several other awards for his 20 years of service. Gary and Julie have previously gone as flight leaders. They get to relax today. Gary Liberty. Robert Noble, U.S. Air Force, 1968 to 1989, Vietnam. Bob had training at Lackland Air Force Base in AIT in aerospace ground equipment age at Chinook. On to McDill, where Bob said they delivered whatever was needed to work on the planes, and they were able to lift the planes off the wheels to test the components. Bob spent 5 years in Anchorage, Alaska, and then another year in Iceland. Bob's final 13 years were at Plattsburgh Air Force Base. Asked about memories, Bob said he recalls going into NCO clubs, but doesn't remember ever coming out. Bob received many commendations for his 21 years of military service to our country. Robert Noble. Joseph Pasurchaw, U.S. Army, 1966 to 1968, Vietnam. Bud was drafted, had basic training at Fort Dix, sent to Blackstone. Bud became a food storage specialist. Bud drove forklifts and any equipment needed to move food around. Bud was assigned to Korea, where he said he met the nicest people he had ever met. The food was shipped in on cargo vessels and unloaded with Army supervision. A container door opened and Bud climbed up on the forklift to close the door as a Korean worker lowered the container, cutting off Joe's toes on his right foot. Bud was told if he stayed in Korea 3 more months, the Army would discharge him 3 months early. Bud stayed and got his early discharge. Joseph Pasurchaw. Roger Reel, U.S. Army, 1961 to 1964, Vietnam. Roger enlisted, had basic training at Fort Dix, AIT at Fort Knox. Assigned to Germany, Roger joined the 30th Airborne Division. Playing baseball, a friend called Roger, who turned, was hit by the ball, breaking all his teeth. On midnight march, a soldier accidentally hit Roger with his M1 rifle, taking his teeth out on the other side. Driving a personnel carrier, Roger got stuck, pinned between the truck and a tank. The tank driver stopped in time to save Roger's life. Later that day, Roger received a call his mother had passed. Spared, Roger's father could have lost both his wife and son that day. Roger loved German beer, Oktoberfest, and the girls he met. Roger Reel. And we move on to Flight 55. Flight Leader Gina Bond. Again, please continue with your respect so the veterans can hear their stories. John Collins, U.S. Army, 1966 to 1968, Vietnam. John was drafted, had basic and AIT communications training at Fort Hood. Deployed to Vietnam, arriving in Chule, John saw prisoners with their heads covered. John knew the war was real. John ran communications lines between artillery units. After a day of hand-to-hand fighting, nearly overrun, the next morning they moved equipment. When told to move, they moved. One night during the Tet Offensive, soldiers sat on top of bunkers watching shelling overhead attacking the base beyond. Receiving mail call was huge. John saw Bob Hope and Raquel Welch. She was much better than Bob. Back in Seattle, John drank milk for the first time in a year. John Collins. Stephen DiMaroni, U.S. Army, 1968 to 1969, Vietnam. Drafted, Steve had basic training at Fort Dix, AIT training at Fort Poe. Deployed to Vietnam, Steve was an infantry unit squad leader. During a briefing, Steve fell asleep. The general told him he would be demoted. Steve said, quote, "Honestly, General, it was boring. No demotion." In 1969, Steve was wounded by shrapnel due to landmines populated by North Vietnamese Army. Steve was airlifted by MASH to Japan and then Korea. Before Steve's parents knew he was wounded, they received his Purple Heart. Steve still suffers with shrapnel in his legs. In Korea, assigned to train duty, Steve checked the haircuts of recruits, sending many of them across the street for military haircuts. Stephen DiMaroni. Ronald Darrow, U.S. Marine Corps, 1961 to 1966, Vietnam. In Vietnam, John was a forward observer for heavy artillery fire, calling in airstrikes. It was hard to watch the results. Handling an M60 machine gun in swamp water up to his chest, Ron heard water sloshing. Ron asked, "Who's there?" No answer. Ron cocked his gun and heard, "It's me, the sergeant checking on his troops." Ron was good friends with Levi Oakes, the code talker. Ron, a Native American, the other Marines called him Chief. Ron is an honor flight motorcycle escort, but no bike today. Ron sees this day as a thank you and a welcome home that he never received. Ron, we promise you a great day today. Ronald Darrow. Dale Gagne, U.S. Army, 1969 to 1978, 1979 to 2000, Vietnam. Dale had basic training at Fort Dix, AIT Technical School at Fort Eustis. Sent to Quan Loy, Vietnam, Dave was with Aviation Unit Bravo Troop, 1st to the 9th Air Cav. A helicopter mechanic, Dale fixed Loach light observation helicopters used as bait for enemy fire. Dale had perimeter night guard duty, searching for enemy mortar and rocket attacks. Dale and Deanna married 5 days before he went to Vietnam, and she sent letters every day. Dale spent 20 years in the Medical Reserve Unit in Malone. Dale received many awards for his 28 years of service to our country. Dale Gagne. Leo Grant, U.S. Air Force, 1966 to 1970, Vietnam. Leo enlisted, went to Amarillo for training in supplies, maintenance, and tech school. In Japan, a radar tower, location almost as large as the base, was hit by an earthquake, disintegrated the causeway, leaving the radar station stranded. Leo went to Thailand, north of the DMZ, across the river from Vietnam. 80% of airstrikes happened there. One night, Viet Cong cut the hydraulic lines on the aircraft. Calling an alert, troops were sent to the bunker. Leo wouldn't go in because of the snakes. The barracks were covered with mosquito nets to keep out rats. With 10 months left, Leo still handled parts and scheduling. Leo Grant. John Homburger, U.S. Air Force, 1969 to 1971, Vietnam. A draft letter from the Marines had John join the Air Force. At Lackland Air Force Base, John had tech school training as a jet engine aircraft mechanic, working on the F-111s. At Nellis Air Force Base, John contracted Crohn's disease. Sent to Tampa, John saw a specialist and spent 2 months in the hospital. John worked on everything that flew: Air Force, Marines, Navy, and Army. On downtimes, John chased armadillos off the flight list. Driving a follow-me truck, John took a shortcut in a restricted area, was stopped, laid out with guns drawn. His supervisor arrived and said, "Don't do it again." Due to Crohn's disease, John received a disability discharge. John Homburger. Norma Homburger, veteran guardian for her husband John. U.S. Army Reserves, 1974 to 1996, Desert Storm. Norma's career began as an LPN medic in a 3-tier field hospital in Malone. At Fort McClellan, Norma trained as an M16 rifle and received a sharpshooter badge. Sent to Fort Devens, Norma worked in tents like the MASH M1934 pyramidal tent. During Desert Storm, Norma spent 3 months on the Walter Reed Army Hospital surgical ward. Tim McGraw visited the wounded veterans. Norma said she got paid once for getting in, twice for staying, and once for getting out. She was promoted, but the Army Reserves had no job for her. Norma served our country for 22 years of medical service. Norma Homburger. William Lyon, U.S. Army, 1970, 1971, Vietnam. Drafted, Bill had basic training at Fort Dix and AIT infantry rifleman training at Fort Polk. Deployed to Vietnam with 2 months' experience, Bill's sergeant made him point man. Bill found 5 enemy booby traps within 100 yards of each other within a half hour while on a mission with his unit. Bill saved many lives that day as they continued northwest to Chile. Bill was asked to return to train with the troops. His mother sent a letter saying she wanted her only son home. Mom won that one. Bill liked the fruitcakes of sea rations, and his family still buys him mini fruitcakes and fruit cocktails. William Lyon.
He's the guy with fruitcakes.
Gerald Richard Miller, U.S. Army, 1960 to 1980, Vietnam. Richard had basic training at Fort Benning and AIT Food Service at Fort Dix. Richard prepared and served 1,000 people per meal, 4 lines deep in the mess hall. Could whoever's back here please quiet down? Please. I'm sorry about that, folks. I'm going to start over. Gerald Richard Miller, U.S. Army, 1960 to 1980, Vietnam. Richard had basic training at Fort Benning and Air Force Service and AIT Food Service at Fort Dix. Richard prepared and served 1,000 people per meal, 4 lines deep in the mess hall. Richard estimates he served tens of thousands of military service members. Richard was in the 9th Infantry Division during the Tet Offensive. Army troops were on defense as communists attacked 64 district capitals. Pallets were dropped from helicopters as Richard distributed sea rations for 7 days. Gerald received a Purple Heart and many other commendations for his 20 years of service. Heading to Vietnam, Richard and his wife Linda were married 57 years ago. Gerald Richard Miller. Roger Murray, U.S. Army, 1965 to 1967, Vietnam. Drafted, Butch trained at Fort Dix in Fort Devens. Butch joined the 196th Light Infantry Brigade as a ground pounder. On a ship for 30 days through the Panama Canal, they arrived in Vietnam. At night, they set up tents. In the morning, they saw snakes coming out of the anthills. On the Saigon River, they covered blankets to keep out snakes and rats. Transferred to the 25th Infantry Division, Butch was wounded, hospitalized for 40 days, sent right back into the field. Near the Cambodian border, they called airstrikes to stop the Viet Cong about 150 meters away. Butch remembers jungles, rice paddies, and sea rations older than him. Roger Murray. Lonnie Parrish, U.S. Air Force, 1967 to 1975, Vietnam. Lonnie trained at Webb Air Force Base as an airline fighter pilot. At McConnell Air Force Base, Lonnie trained pilots on F-16 and F-4 planes. Deployed to Vietnam, Lonnie flew F-4, F-105, AT-33 fighter aircraft. Lonnie flew 360 combat missions. I'm repeating that. Lonnie flew 360 combat missions. Lonnie received the Distinguished Flying Cross, numerous commendations, and 22 medals for shooting down enemy planes. Lonnie also served 16 and a half years in the Vermont Air National Guard. After Ronnie's first tour in Vietnam, he and his wife welcomed their first child. After his second tour, they welcomed their second child. Lonnie's wife, Susan, said he could not serve a third tour. Lonnie Parrish. Ronald Robert, U.S. Navy, 1967 to 1970, Vietnam. At the Great Lakes Naval Station, Ronnie trained in commissary, ordering, and supplying for combat, and he cooked. Aboard the USS Mount Baker, AE-4, an ammunition ship. Serviced aircraft carriers, battleships, and destroyers. Ronnie did 4 tours between the Philippines and Vietnam. Ronnie was aboard the USS Tawasa, ATF-92, as they rescued the USS Evans, DE-023, towing the aft section back to port. Ronnie and a friend raced rickshaws in Hong Kong. The winner kept the money. Crossing the equator, Ronnie became a shellback, a Navy ritual. And he saw the World's Fair in Japan. Ronnie Robert. William Sutherland, U.S. Marine Corps, 1966 to 1969, Vietnam. Bill enlisted, had basic training at Parris Island, and then AIT, Electronics School in San Diego. Deployed to Vietnam for 19 months, Bill was a ground radio repairman. On his 20th birthday, Bill noticed a small sailboat as its long occupant, Bill Shaw, was thrown into the churning seas. Without regard for his own safety, Bill, fully aware of the dangers, plunged into the water, located the occupant who was unconscious underwater. With great difficulty, Bill rescued and saved Shaw's life. Bill was presented with the Navy Marine Corps Medal for his heroism. William Sutherland. Robert Titus, U.S. Army, 1964 to 1966, Vietnam. Drafted, Bob had basic training at Fort Dix and trained at Fort Campbell, assigned to Company C Engineering. Handling heavy equipment, Bob trained building roads, bridges, airstrips, and learned demolition. Scheduled for Vietnam, a basketball injury sent him to the hospital. At Fort Campbell, the companies took turns receiving veterans who were killed in Vietnam, and they handled their burials, making the world real. While hospitalized with leg issues, Bob came face to face with injured veterans, hard to deal with. Bob served as an honor guard for his local American Legion and was named Legionnaire of the Year in 2011. Robert Titus. William Waldron, U.S. Marine Corps, 1969 to 1975, Vietnam. Drafted, Bill and a friend stood in line in Albany. His friend asked Bill to switch places, putting Bill the last in line. The officer took first, middle, and last people, so Bill became a Marine. Bill had basic training at Paris Island, became a combat engineer at Camp Lejeune, completed landmine warfare school at Camp Pendleton. Deployed to Vietnam, Bill at booby trap school was told if he found a mine, blow it up. Bill was aboard the USS St. Louis, GS-19, for a month back stateside. Bill was released early because he was drafted. Asked about his experiences, Bill said, "I just went with the flow." William Waldron, and this is our final person, so he's last again.
Thank you, Janet. Rebecca Hamilton joins us now.
Hi everyone. The Beekman Town 7th grade class would like to welcome everyone who's here to watch the veterans. We'd like to wish the veterans a safe and happy flight today. Thank you for your service. If you are joining the honor run, race, or walk, at the end of the ceremony, when you hear the bikes fire up for the motorcade, you're going to go to the starting line, which is over by Mr. Jones' office where you registered. And then the walkers for the 1 mile will wait there. And as soon as the motorcade has left the oval, the walkers will start. So the race starts before the motorcade comes, so that while you're running, the motorcade is going to pass you along the road for a really beautiful experience. So again, thank you everyone. Veterans, we wish you the best. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you, Rebecca. We want to thank you for attending this morning. You are welcome to join that motorcade over to the airport and the FBO located at 1 Alabama Avenue. We won't be going to the airport and the terminal this trip. The procession will circle around the parking lot. The buses will peel off into the FBO hangar. This time there will be a limited view of the veterans boarding the aircraft. Remember tonight, though, please, around 8:30, our veterans will be returning back home right here to the Oval. The reception is planned for when they arrive back at 8:30. We hope you can make it back to welcome them tonight when they get back from their wonderful day. Thank you all for coming. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.
Another outstanding ceremony here for the North Country Honor Flight. There's where the walk or run is going to be beginning. We're lining up as we always do, trying to get to them as they head out onto the oval. There's a few bikes that have been out ahead of the pack. We'll wait for the official start. As was the case last time, police bikers will be leading the entourage leaving. State troopers following. North Country Honor Flights here at former Plattsburgh Air Force Base Oval. A lot of history in and around this this facility long before it was an air base. It had a proud military history. And they are off. If it doesn't rain, my wife Judy will maybe have a camera at the other end of the oval so we can get the entire group leaving. In recent years, because the entourage has grown so much, I haven't been able to get from here to that location in time to get them coming off the oval. Just be able to get them going around here and then get to that location and catch them coming around the oval, but it just parade is too long now. And with all the bikes and others that have shown up. As I said earlier, a very nice ceremony once again. Always a great ceremony here. The people who work so hard to put these flights on, these send-offs, and the flights themselves, and the ones who work hard to sponsor and underwrite these efforts. They're very expensive trips. So if you're looking to volunteer, if you're looking to help raise funds, look up that North Country Honor Flight site on Facebook, and they also have a website. Okay, now we're going to head for the other side of the oval and see what Judy's got on her camera. And as we're heading that way, we'll see this run start here, this run and walk. Run and walk here. So, youngsters are running and oldsters are walking. We'll get them. We'll get them as they meander by, and we meander in the other direction. Camera will be a little bouncy, but that's just the way it is. And now we'll head to the other end of the oval and see what Judy's got on her camera.
All right, here we go. Help me out now. Let's
Okay, the audio should have changed a little bit here. As Judy holds the camera and we see the honor flight buses and their escorts leaving the oval on this June 22nd, 2024. A big thank you to all the people who show up for these send-offs and the people who will be back here this evening for the returns. And as Judy follows this last truck onto the horizon, we'll thank you for watching. Viewer-supported Hometown Cable. It's our pleasure to continue to cover these honor flights, and we hope to do it for as long as they continue into the future. Thanks for watching.